And if you would, please mute your microphones unless you want to unmute to talk. Seeing Dr. DeBose, so excited. Seeing Dr. DuBose, so excited to see everyone on here inspires me to show you our, now I've got to add to this, but this is our latest, just so you can kind of get an idea of who all is participating. And I need to add Troy Montgomery. And as you see, Dr. DuBose and Dr. Lunar and their team are on here. AUM is working on, they are actually already a registered apprenticeship sponsor for teacher apprenticeship. So they're working on adding nursing. And so I probably have left somebody else off this list, but y'all are adding schools faster than I can keep up. So just very excited to have all of these amazing nursing programs on board with the Alabama Nursing Apprenticeship. All right, let me stop sharing that. Come back to my screen. Okay, I'll just work on through our agenda. The first thing, just a few things that have come up. I'm going to start with updates from our office and the Board of Nursing, and then we'll have a work hands demonstration and Q&A. And then Dr. Scarborough and her team from Coastal Alabama are going to share some best practices. They're really doing a super job with their journey worker and apprentice onboarding. And a lot of you have asked questions about what does that look like and what are other people doing? So we've asked them to share today, and then we'll open up the floor to just Q&A from the group. One of the things that has come up is just when you are communicating with your journey workers, whether that's onboarding them or that check-ins that you have with them, making sure they understand their role with the on-the-job learning checklist is they are assessing the apprentice's progress toward proficiency. It's not a one-and-done check-off. We think some of them misunderstood and thought it was yes, I've seen them do that, and they're just checking off. And I love what Dean Nairmore from Jeff State says, you know, I want them doing this to the level I would let them do this on my child or my grandmother. That's what we're talking about. So just very consistently over time before they sign off that someone's complete on a competency. Speaking of completing, we've had some of our first completers of the apprenticeship. So I just wanted to give a reminder. I know it's a little different. Once they graduate your program, they're still your apprentice until they pass the NCLEX. They're no longer your student, but they're still your apprentice. And once they do pass the NCLEX, you go into Rapids and complete them in Rapids. If you need help with that, reach out to me or your regional project manager. We are more than happy to help you with that. Another thing I had on my list, just wanted to thank those of you who are participating with our colleague, Julie Cornegay. For those of you who don't know, she's working on her doctorate, and she is researching confidence levels between the apprentices and the traditional nursing students. And she's surveying them before the 4th semester of the nursing program, before the practicum semester, and after the practicum semester, and comparing the results. We're really excited. Anecdotally, what we're hearing from the field is great news about competence and confidence from the apprentices. And but we would, you know, we're our team. We love some data, and so we're just very eager to see what she finds and what she's able to uncover with that. That leads me into the next thing on my list. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Gadsden State Community College. As you all know, we do compliance monitoring of our programs to ensure quality. And we recently did compliance monitoring of Gadsden State. They passed with flying colors, did such an amazing job. And so I just want to give a shout out to Cindy Mullinax and Kelly Davis and their team. They are subject matter experts. If you have questions when it comes time for the nursing faculty side for compliance monitoring of your program, they can give you the tea on that. And then Renika Boley is their apprenticeship coordinator, and she's the poster child for apprenticeship coordinator of nursing apprenticeships. She really has it going on. Sophia and I went and did the compliance monitoring. She knocked our socks off. So again, if you have questions or when it comes time for you to be able to do those, you know, it's your turn to do that, they are a wonderful resource for you. And part of our compliance monitoring is we interview our apprentices and our journey workers, and that's where I was going with the anecdotal evidence. one of their apprentices said, I already know when I start, after I graduate, I won't feel like a new nurse. And we had another one tell us, I'm a single mom. I would not be able to afford to be in nursing school right now if it weren't for the apprenticeship. So just hearing great stuff from the field, and we appreciate all that all of you are doing. Okay, I think that's everything on my list. So Josh, I'm passing it to you for your updates.
All right. Good morning. I have a few small updates from employer-related questions that we've gotten kind of over the last quarter. Some of you have already dealt with these, and if you haven't, you might. The first question that's been the most common that's come up has been questions about work commitments. I understand this is pretty common in healthcare industry, that a person that goes through training is asked to sign a contract with the employer that they're going to stay for some period of time. We've always discouraged those in all industries at the AOA because the evidence shows that what it really does is start a clock in that employee's mind of how long they owe that employer. And so, if I tell you you got to stay with me for 18 months, then you're thinking, okay, I've got 6 months left, and then I can go do whatever. Even National Guard recruiters and military folks now de-emphasize the length of commitment because they want you to stay. And so we have traditionally always said, we're not going to prohibit them, but we discourage them. We do have a policy, as you all know, though, that prevents a student from incurring debt. Now, honestly, when we were writing that policy, we were thinking about traditional student debt, taking out student loans and that kind of thing. What came to our attention is that some of these commitments that employers, particularly in healthcare, were doing were set up as loans. And that's a violation of our policy because that means that they're incurring debt. So what is the difference? The difference is in most of the examples that I saw, some were, there's no other word in my vocabulary to describe it besides egregious. Some of them were just absolutely locking these people in to be indentured servants for the next, forever. But they were sort of arbitrarily assigning a value to what they decided the training was worth. I saw one where the value had been assigned at $11,000. And I asked the employer, like, well, where did you come up with $11,000? And they really couldn't defend it. It was just, that's what so in July, you all probably saw we had to put out a letter, a memo from my office, just clarifying what would and would not be permissible under these types of work commitments. So if you haven't seen that, it's on our website, or you can check it out. If it hasn't come to you and it hasn't been an issue, I definitely don't recommend you go out in the field and start ruffling feathers about it. But these are your apprentices, and you want to be looking out for their welfare as much as we are looking out for meeting the needs of employers. So, sometimes they'll come to you, and that's the only way we found out about them was some apprentices brought them to their sponsors and said, is this right? Am I supposed to be signing this? So, some of the high level points on what we would allow is, one, it can't be a loan of any flavor, which means it can't have interest attached to it. It can't have, something that says if you leave, what do we call those, non-compete clauses where there's going to be a penalty if you go to another organization. The dollar amount needs to be directly tied to actual dollars that they spent on the cost of training that person. So, I mean, I want to see receipts. If we're going to do that, in some cases, I saw examples of apprentices that were being asked to sign these loan agreements for, exorbitant amounts of money. And that apprentice was on Pell Grant, and the hospital hadn't paid anything for the person to go to school. So, if it comes to you, I know you have to also maintain your relationships with your employers. So if you see one that looks a little out there or you're not sure about it, just call. I will personally talk to any employer. I've had multiple meetings with employers. I try to help them. Let's find a middle ground on it. What you can feel good about and what we can permit. And so far, that's worked out every time that we've had to have that conversation. Of course, the employers are looking at it as a thing that they need to do to protect their investment, is the way they see it. So, there's some logic to that, but there's also risk with every investment. And when you look at the total cost of the investment, in a lot of cases, the total amount they're spending out for the cost of the training is significantly less than they're giving out in signing bonuses. So, I mean, it's not a heck of a lot of money in most cases. Even if you pay the full bill for the person's associate's degree, which is pretty uncommon. But even if you do, it's not a whole lot of money. Now, if you go and you're paying for one of our BSN programs, it is more money. And so, I get it. You might want to have that work commitment. So we're not taking a hard, anti-employer stance or anything right here, but we do have to look out for the welfare of the apprentices. So all that to say, if you run into one, if you hear of that from your apprentices and you're not sure that it's kosher, let me know. Try to get a copy of it. Let me know, and I'll try to have that conversation with the employer. And I have no problem being the bad guy. I got plenty of people that I'm not on their Christmas card list already, so I can do that so that it doesn't harm your relationship with the employer. And just I'll set it up. It's our thing, not the school's thing. Along those lines, a way to retain people. Yesterday, in the last couple of weeks, last 2 Tuesdays, Meredith and I have been at, and Tawana and our other people on our staff have been doing these regional work-based learning trainings. So y'all know we also do work in other types of work-based learning besides just apprenticeship. We had one in Anniston, and then we had another one yesterday in Lord, I don't remember where we were. Calhoun. Yeah, it's been one of those days already. Today's been a long week. So the trainings, one of the things that we saw was job shadowing. And as they were talking about this job shadowing, they were talking about they were interviewing people who had participated in the job shadowing at the very beginning. Now, this was a diesel program, but they were talking about before students went into the diesel program, they basically took them on field trips. They had scheduled, they did 3 per semester, and they would go out and take some class time and go visit employers. And they had videos of the apprentice, or in this case, they were just students, asking them, what were you looking for? What were you looking at? And the most resounding comments that I heard from those students, one, they said, I wanted to see how the bosses and the other technicians treated each other at this place. What was the culture about? The other young lady said, I wanted to see, as I went out there, I saw positions that I didn't even know existed. So in her case, she was talking about some technical writing, service jobs and things like that. So she knew she wanted to work in that industry, but it turned out she wasn't positive she wanted to be a technician. Maybe she wanted to work in one of those other jobs. So as Meredith and I were debriefing about that yesterday, and we were prepping for this call, you guys have them in 112 already, or that whatever your equivalent is. I guess it's all 112. You've got them in that intro level class. This is not a requirement, just a suggestion, something to think about. If you're not doing some job shadowing, maybe think about a way to work that in. Take them out and let's just visit a few of the hospitals or the nursing homes or whatever on the front end, so that when they come to that recruiting day or that interview day or however you set it up, that person's already got a visual. They've already sort of got a vibe of what that place is like. And the data from, and this is a relatively new program. That one was at Wallace, right, Meredith? Wallace Hansville, the diesel program. Yeah. They've only been doing this for about a year, but the evidence that they're seeing already is people are getting jobs at the places that they visit because they feel comfortable with that. And we believe that that's going to lead to improved retention, which is a big concern for your healthcare employers, is the retention. So that's the reason I'm just throwing that out there, something for you to think about. Wallace Hansville Diesel by Distance program. Anna, I've forgotten Anna's last name, but we can get it for you. They're doing a great job and have some great examples if you wanted to check that out. So just putting that out there as an option for you to help your employers to feel better about the picks they're making and improving their retention with their apprentices without having to try to lock
Josh,
them
could
in.
I add something to that? It's not the diesel mechanic faculty who is doing that. It's career planning and placement or something like that. So just wanted to say,
their college career
we're not
services
saying
office.
add this to your plate also. But yeah,
Right.
there's somebody on campus who's doing things like this already who could help with this. And I had a conversation with nursing faculty earlier from one of your schools who said, I have some students who have their apprentices in long-term care, and they get there and it's kind of not what they thought it was going to be. Well, this would be a great way, if maybe they could do some tours or shadowing ahead of time, find that out. But we did have a Gadsden State, I told y'all we interviewed some apprentices. we interviewed one in long-term care, and she said, I wanted to go into peds until I tried long-term care. Now I love it. I'm staying in long-term care. So it could go either way. But anyway, thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, one more thing. So yeah, that's not a requirement. That's a suggestion. Check it out. You've probably all got somebody on your campus that's doing career services and recruiting and stuff like that. So maybe they could help you implement a program like that. The other one is wage disclosures. So we have had a situation where an employer basically did not want to tell the apprentices how much they were going to make until the job offer was officially given by HR. They said that was their policy or whatever. Now, my immediate reaction to that is how many people in HR took their job first and then found out how much they were going to make? Probably none of them. On its face, that's unreasonable to me. But also in the apprenticeship rules, that is not allowed. So if you have this situation, you may not. I hope it never comes up, but I'm just prepping you with some stuff I've seen. If you have a situation where the employer is not wanting to disclose the wages, that is not permitted. And it's specifically lined out in the App A, that's your work process. I think it's page 6 or 7, item F. And it says that any person applying to the apprenticeship program has to be given the opportunity to review the full set of standards. And that set of standards includes the work process, the standards, and the employer acceptance agreement where they specify the wages. Now, that's not the same as a job offer. A person might come in and take a shift where there's a shift differential, or they may bring some experience with them and they get some extra pay or whatever. But that employer has already specified to you when they joined your program, these are the minimums that we're going to pay at these bumps. And any apprentice applying to that program has the right to know that in advance of really even applying for the job. Because what's happened is they weren't told, the employer wouldn't disclose it, but by the time they find out, they've already missed the opportunities to apply at other places. Now, there's a fine line to walk here, especially for wage discussions can always be tricky. You do not have to disclose to John Q. Public out there in the world what every hospital or nursing home that's working with you is making. Only the people who are applying to that apprenticeship program have the right to see that information. Hospital A does not have the right to say, oh, I want to see what hospital B is paying. Don't allow it. Don't permit it. They probably won't, but just to be clear on that. But the sponsor, of course, knows what every individual employer that's participating is paying, and an apprentice applicant has the right to know, hey, I'm thinking about applying to such and such a location. What's their pay scale? What's designated in their employer acceptance agreement. I think that's probably a one-off. We probably won't have any other employers that do that, but I'm just trying to give you fully, have you be fully prepared if that kind of stuff comes up. It's not permissible under the Appendix A for employers to have that. And then the last thing, and Meredith has already mentioned this about work hands. I just want to say, everybody's going to be using work hands for this program, and you're going to see a demo in a little while from that. But as I was making my list of employer related items, really this is an employer driven thing because we've got multiple healthcare facilities that are working with more than one of you. So, I'm Laney Hospital, but I'm getting folks from Southern Union, and I'm getting folks from Chattahoochee Valley, and I'm getting folks from Auburn. And Auburn's using a spreadsheet, and Southern Union's using work hands, and Chattahoochee Valley's using a Google Doc, right? And it's not effective or efficient communication. It's putting too much burden on those employers to be trying to track that in different ways. And they're not, I just made all that up about who's using what, but you know what I mean. So that's why we're going to this unified, everybody's using work hands kind of thing. And Meredith and I think we've got staff from work hands on here is going to show you that stuff in a little while. That's all of that, all I had on my list, Meredith.
Great. Thank you, Josh. And Josh mentioned, we've had 2 of our regional work-based learning events. I will put information in my follow-up email about the other regional events that are coming up. Dr. Scarborough and her team were statewide Seal of Excellence winners last year, and Dean Bunton and her team, the Auburn team, several people came to our statewide summit. So that's just a great opportunity for you to hear from other practitioners about different things they are doing all along the continuum of work-based learning. I saw several of you in the Region 1 one yesterday. I do think it's a good use of time. So I'll give you that information. And our statewide summit is tentatively set for Birmingham, April 9th, 10th, and 11th. More information to come on that, but we would love to see any or all of you there. And we're even going to, this year, we're part of a policy academy with some other states studying high quality work-based learning and youth apprenticeship. So we're inviting some other states to come in and talk about what they're doing too. So I think it'll be fresh, really good content for you guys. Okay, so Katie from work, wait, let me ask this first. Honor from the Board of Nursing, are you on? He's got one update, Katie, and then you're up. Honor, were you able to get in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do this from the car, and I had trouble with Teams. Yeah, I'm on here.
Okay, great. Did you want to talk about the update to the rule about the interim of the temp license and all of that?
Yeah, so just to refresh my memory, Meredith, we had talked a couple of weeks ago about the gap between licensure and graduation, and this is not explicitly the reason we did that, but that should be solved because we are changing the rules that will be effective November 13th to we're going to eliminate the temporary license fee and consolidate it into the license fee, so all new applicants will be issued a temporary permit unless they're disqualified from it for a disciplinary reason or something like that would otherwise be an issue with their licensure. But every new applicant will automatically be applied for a temporary permit starting November 13th.
Thank you so much, Honor. And the reason I had brought that to him when we were in a meeting with an employer, they said once the apprentice graduated, they had to demote them to a tech for like 3 weeks while they waited for the temp license. And so I had asked Honor, and he was like, well, we're changing that anyway. So this will solve that problem. So thank you so much for sharing that information, Honor.
Yeah. And just to finish up, that's been a persistent issue with employers because a lot of times I think the applicants think they'll save a little money by not getting the temporary permit, but they accept a job that starts before they test. So that's really the reason that we decided to just give everybody the permit, but it will fix your problem as well, I think.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it on over to, yeah. Thanks for being with us. I'm passing it over to Katie with Work Hands. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. And Meredith, do I have the ability to share my screen?
You sure do.
Okay.
It's the up arrow right to the left where it says leave. Yeah. Let me know if you can.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie from WorkHands. I'm the head of training and operations. And so I know that we don't have a ton of time today, so I'm just going to take you quickly through what this looks like, what WorkHands looks like on the supervisor end of things, and also what your apprentices will see. And if there's any questions, please, I don't know what the protocol is, but I'm fine if you just want to, shout out your question. That's totally fine with me. So what you're seeing right now on your screen is what any supervisor is going to see. They're going to have a bucket for their apprentices. If they have any time-based programs just within their program, they'll see time cards. If not, this is just an example. So this is just here. And then they'll see their evaluations, which are where those competencies live. So let's see what the apprentices see really quickly. They'll be able to go into all the apprentices that they're assigned to at any given time. They'll be able to check out their OJT based on the total skills, how many have been completed, where they are in the chart. The chart is going to show both red and green, and that's just showing you where the system is sort of calculating this apprentice to be at any given time. And then as you scroll down to more granular work processes, you'll see that some of them are crossed out already. That means that they've been graded on that highest level of the multiple choice on those competency evaluations. Anything else will still get weighted. You'll just see which one they're at. So like this is it demonstrates fundamentals. It's getting weighted at a 0.8. And then they'll get the full, 1% or 100% once they get to that highest level in the multiple choice, and it will get crossed off and they'll see the date next to it. So apprentices can always come in here and see just on this screen exactly where they are. They also will always know exactly who their supervisor is. If they need their own progress report, they'll have it there. And then they can keep track of their courses here as well. So not a learning management system, but we're all keeping track of where we all are at any given time. So that's what an apprentice is going to see. The majority of the responsibility in this competency-based program is going to fall on the supervisor to complete these competency evaluations. So there's two ways that they can do them. They can either just look in their evaluations bucket at any given time, and this will list all of the evaluations that are needed to be done. They also can go into each of the apprentices once again into their particular accounts, go into evaluations, and then go into either an evaluation that they've already set up in there, or if they need to set up a new one, they're just going to hit the orange plus button, put in their start date, their end date. That is going to be not the start and end date for their apprentice, but it's going to be what are we evaluating? What range have we evaluated for this competencies checklist? So those are going to be those start and end dates. And then they can just go ahead and save this evaluation in there and come back to it if they wanted to. And so they'll also see all these tags. So they're going to see if something's current, if it's approved. The skills from a previous evaluation are always going to carry over into the next one. So in this previous evaluation, there were 6.4 skills that were completed. So when we go into the September evaluation, and this is what each supervisor is going to see, they're going to be able to see anything that was previously evaluated on. Now, if those aren't going to change, they can just leave them as they are. If they want to come in here and maybe some things have changed here, they can change their answers. They could scroll down. Maybe this one has changed. Maybe they're now proficient here. Maybe we're in the advanced section as well. Whatever they need to do, they're going to answer their questions and then they scroll to the bottom. They have the option to save. So if they want to save it over a period of time and work on the evaluation, that's fine. Or when they click approve, their apprentice will be notified of the evaluation that it has been approved. They'll see that this tag has changed and the apprentice will see that change in their OJT chart. For supervisors, they also have reports. Now, I just set this up this morning, so I apologize. There's no reports in here, but they will have a roster of their apprentices, and they will also have a evaluations report in here. They also have access to their apprentices' reports as well if they needed to grab that progress report. They can also send messages to their apprentice using this little talk bubble that's attached to all of the apprentices. And then if they need to get support, they can use the FAQ box and follow along with our FAQ guide, or they can always click on the support and start a conversation with our support team. We do know that sometimes this gets a little robust and there can be a lot of questions. And so we do want, all of you supervisors, apprentices, please feel free that you can reach out to us and ask questions at any time. We are here and we do want to help as much as possible. So that's sort of the nutshell of both what an apprentice is going to see and what a supervisor sees, if there's any questions.
Wendy, Dr. Dubose, do you have a question?
I do, and I didn't know if this was going to,
Okay.
if this is the appropriate time to ask it or if I need to wait till later. So what's best?
Go ahead, sure.
Okay, so I understand, employers obviously have their files on their employees, and I understand the legal parts of that. What of that information will be communicated to the theory instructor and stuff? In other words, all these skills that are being listed there, how is that communicated to the instructor of the course?
Well, this is just, remember we talked about you're wearing two hats here. You're the
Right.
related instruction provider and you're the sponsor.
Right.
So when you're a registered apprenticeship sponsor, the employer is letting you know how they're doing on the job. That's all this is
Okay.
about.
Okay.
All of your nursing school stuff is however you normally do it. The
Okay.
only thing nursing school that's in here is where they can show I've passed these classes now.
Okay.
Everything else is totally separate. And I think that will make more sense when you hear Tiffany do the journey worker onboarding,
Okay.
because she's going to talk about those two parts.
Okay, and then one last thing, I'll leave you alone. I also noticed in there, some of the things were like field training. Is this something that implies, like, we were talking about EKGs the other day. That's not something, it's not on an NCLEX that they know how to set up an 12-lead EKG, but something that employers typically want them to learn. So is that where it says field training, am I to assume that that means that's something that they're learning on the job, but not necessarily a skill we require? Is that right?
Yes, and you'll be
Okay.
able to communicate that with the
Okay.
employer if there is anything that y'all don't teach.
Okay.
But that the three categories you saw there, that's what we talked about, that I do, we do, you do. Just
Gotcha.
fancy words for
Okay.
the I do, we do, you do. So you know what stage. You can go log in and see, kind of, is the apprentice just shadowing the journey worker, or are they doing, guided practice with the journey worker? At any time, you'll be able to log in and see kind of where they are with each of the competencies.
Okay, perfect. That was okay. That answered everything. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Awesome. Sure.
Katie, can you go back to the list where it shows the 3 columns? So like if I'm looking at the competencies, the part Meredith was just talking about, where I would mark somebody has either, met basic, or I don't remember what the terminologies are, but where I would mark
Sure.
the different 3.
So these are your multiple choice options there. Is this what you're looking for?
Gotcha. Okay. So it's not 3 columns. It's here's the competency, and then I'm going to select what level that person has done that to.
Correct. And then they're
Okay.
always going to carry forward, and you can either change them the next time you do them or leave them where they are, and you'll be able to see them very clearly in that OJT chart as well.
So under that example that we were just asked about, the perform 12 lead EKG, just click on that field training down, right there. If you select that.
Yeah, I mean, you can always put a not applicable too, if that's not something that program would do, I would assume, based on what these multiple choice options are.
I'm not seeing options pop up. Are there supposed to be options there?
You can't see approved for field training, NA, demonstrates
No.
fundamentals? Okay, what are you guys seeing right now?
I see the list, and I see where it says select answer and field training, but I think probably what's happening is when you're clicking the box, it's popping up like a separate window, and we're not seeing that separate window with the choices in it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So let me see if I can show you a different way. My apologies. I'm not a
It
Microsoft
probably
Teams
is.
person. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
it's probably related to how you shared. You probably shared that window. So if you go back up and stop sharing, hit stop share,
Okay.
and then when you select share, don't choose the window, but actually choose your screen, and then it'll just show us whatever's on your screen instead of.
Okay. So can you see this now? You can see work hands?
You can see, yeah, see work hands.
Okay, so let's go into this evaluation. And let's go down here. Can you see the options now?
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Now I see the options. All right, that makes more sense now, because I was confused about where they were gonna pick.
No, sorry about that. And thank you for teaching me that right now.
No, it's okay. All right, good. That helps. That answers what I was looking for. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions that I can answer?
Right. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And if you all have any questions at any other time, please feel free to email me or reach out in any other way.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye. All right, Dr. Scarborough, I will pass it on to you and your team.
All right. Hello and good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, good morning.
All right. Are you able to see my screen? I have a PowerPoint presentation that should be showing.
Yes, I
Okay.
see it.
All right. Great. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm always excited to share. And Meredith had asked if I'd just come and provide just a little overview of how Coastal Alabama is onboarding our journey workers and our apprentices. And like I said, I'm always happy to share. I do have a couple of disclaimers. First of all, I know so many of you have great practices. So please don't hesitate to chime in at any point in time. Feel free to share comments, anything that you'd like to add. We'd love to have it. And I also wanted to recognize Brittany Denton, who is with me today. She is our apprenticeship coordinator and clinical coordinator, and she's done just a really fabulous job with these onboarding sessions. And she developed much of this presentation, so I wanted to make sure that I gave her credit where credit is due because she does a ton of stuff. So thank you, Brittany. Whenever we are onboarding, or really, I have to go kind of back to the beginning, when we're talking to students about the potential to participate in an apprenticeship program, we want to make sure, of course, that we go over all of the details about what an apprenticeship is and provide overviews to them. And we really start all of that communication with our initial letter that we send students, notifying them that they've been accepted into the nursing program here at Coastal Alabama. So it all begins there, where they're notified that we do have this opportunity for them should they choose to apply. So let's get started with talking about eligibility. We make sure that students are aware that they are able to apply at two different points. So our current students who are in NUR 112, they're able to apply to start in NUR 113, which is our second semester. And then our current mobility students who are already LPNs or paramedics, they're able to enroll in 209 to start an apprenticeship beginning in 211. So, and it'd be our LPN students, of course, that are eligible. We do have some exceptions that can apply if those students that are in the mobility program have previously been employed as a nurse apprentice, maybe in their LPN program. So that's another entry point. But typically it's going to be those students who are already accepted into 112 or 209. When we're reviewing the partnership and what an apprenticeship is with students and with potential journey workers, and with our partners in the clinical setting, we want to make sure that they all know the roles that are involved. So one big portion of our review with them in onboarding practice is to make sure they understand that students are accepted as apprentices and they're employed by a healthcare facility, and that we act as the sponsor and that we maintain oversight of the didactic portion, the skills lab portion, simulation experiences, and that we're still involved in that clinical rotation schedule and such. And then we partner with the Alabama Office of Apprenticeships and the Alabama Board of Nursing to make sure that we're following all the rules and the regulations and doing things appropriately. We always review the facts with the students, make sure they understand that they're employees, again, of the facility, that they're typically going to work around 24 hours per week, maybe more, just depending on the needs of the facility, the needs of the student, and that they'll typically work on a designated unit that is set by the healthcare facility. So again, based on their needs. They are paid for clinical practicum hours. We make sure they understand that they're not required to be paid for class, simulation, or lab, although I will mention we do have a partner that asked if they could pay for the simulation part, since we do count simulation for clinicals. So we do let students know that that is not required, though, so it's not completely expected. We do notify students that the facility may request a work commitment from the student nurse apprentice, and that is where, of course, they agree to work for that facility for an additional period of time after graduation. And we make sure we mention to those students that, hey, this is not encouraged, but they need to carefully review when they sign any employment paperwork that, if they're agreeing to that work commitment, that it doesn't fall within some of those specifications that Mr. Lamy talked to us a few moments ago about that, those things that are not allowed. So at least the students are mindful of that and aware that, okay, they cannot ask me to pay back loans and such. Important fact that we always mention with our facilities when we're signing on, and with the students, with the journey workers, they need to know that the facility is the last dollar scholar. And I do believe this is in the agreements now, which we're very thankful for, but we do try to remind everybody of this as often as we can. Early on, there were a couple of instances where you might hear, oh, I didn't realize, after you had covered that particular portion with the employer, but we kind of have to remind them that, yes, last dollar scholar is a requirement. And then just a review of getting started. If you haven't, I wanted to back up just for a moment and tell you kind of the procedure for starting this if you haven't. You partner with the Alabama Office of Apprenticeship and develop the work process schedule, which is the Appendix A document. We hosted meetings with potential clinical partners. We gauged interest, basically gave that overview. And then once the employing partner decided they wanted in, then we developed and signed the employer acceptance agreement, which is the Appendix D document. And that's with every facility, you'll have an individual Appendix D. We again, mention to our students in the letters that we send out for admission into the nursing program that they'll have an opportunity to learn more about nursing apprenticeships that we offer in days to follow. And at our new nursing student orientation, we do take several minutes and again, really get into a few more details, let them know that we'll have a recruiting event early in their first semester, usually the second month of nursing school. We'll give them an application, for every program that they're interested in participating in, or every facility that they'd like to be employed by potentially. They are able to fill out that application, and then we provide that information to our employing partners, and we set a deadline for facilities to make their selections. And then after that comes back to us, the onboarding processes can start, and hiring by the facility, they can do their orientation and onboarding at that time as well. So this is basically a list that covers everything that we review with the students. And we basically cover the exact same thing with our journey workers. We want to make sure everybody's informed of each of these pieces. We just have a little bit different perspective when we present it to our journey workers versus our apprentices. So the EEO, or Equal Opportunity Policy, that AOA provided to us, this is reviewed with all of our apprentices, with all of the journey workers, and there's a poster, and we post that on each campus, and that is a requirement. We cover the OJL work schedule, or wage progression schedule, and this would be found in your Appendix A document. So this is the floor wage that you might set. So this is just an example of what it could be, so that the students are aware of the wage progression that should take place. And again, we let them know that, it may vary by institution or by employing partner, that the wage may be greater, but it should not be less at any point in time on this wage progression schedule. Next, we talk to them about the complaint procedure. So AOA also has this document for us to review. So this is, again, something that we just review with the students. We let them know that, of course, the chain of command is always followed first and foremost. And we hope to settle any kind of issues that we can locally. But if not, then, of course, this is a route that they are always able to take. We go over and review the disability disclosure form with our students, and the journey workers also know that that's a potential. We actually maintain a copy of the form locked in a secure location in our offices, but we provide the forms to our person who puts information into Rapids as well. The permitting piece is a very large part, of course, of the nursing apprenticeship. So we want to make sure that we review all of the permitting information, the administrative code. We want to review all of that thoroughly with everybody that's involved. So we do have students complete this step when they're onboarding with us. We typically just do this in person, where they complete the permit application, and we mail these together along with, notification that payment is forthcoming by the employer. At that point, we'd also send a list of the students who their application has been sent to the board to those employing partners and just let them know that, hey, it's time for that payment to be made, and we make sure we provide them with the address. We found that it's a good idea to send these together along with the citizenship form, any kind of documentation that's required, such as the driver's license, copy of the driver's license. We send that again together just to make sure that they're all going. We found if you allow the students to do this separately, that that can delay permitting, and we all know we don't want to get behind with clinical time and such, as that can be hard to catch up if you get behind it all. So that's how we handle the permitting application. Just a little word of advice as well. We make sure that we check the ABON website frequently. Once the permit is obtained, then we try to check the status just to ensure that everything is still kosher at the beginning of every semester. Permits can become invalid if a student withdraws from the apprenticeship program, if they withdraw from the nursing education program, maybe if they resign their position, if they don't make satisfactory progress. So we try to make sure that we're being mindful of all those exit points and the potentials, and we want to make sure that we double check if the permit is valid, active, inactive, or our records. The next thing we review is the administrative code, and we just want to make sure that everybody understands the rules, the regulations set forth by the board. We want to make sure that they understand the journey worker is responsible for direct oversight for management of the skills, the procedures that are being performed, and evaluating those competencies. So there are two methods of evaluations that our journey workers have to complete, and one is work hands, so the competencies that they were just speaking of with the work hands demo. And then we use ClinPrep, and I know every facility may do something a little bit different, every school, for clinical evaluations, but we do require that our journey workers document on our clinical evaluation tool for days designated as clinical days. We make sure that the apprentice and the journey worker are told multiple times that they have to be paired one-on-one for clinical practicum and work days, and they can never have more than that one apprentice per journey worker at a time. On this document, you'll see some of the red squares. These are just particular areas that we emphasize. Of course, the definitions of each item that we think is very important to again emphasize. And then we also make sure that we validate, tell the journey workers that we're validating those skills in lab first in order for them to be able to perform clinical skills at the site.
Tiffany?
Apprentices,
Can I interrupt you? Ask you to go back
Absolutely.
one slide.
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that one item 10 over there on the right that is circled or highlighted, the supervision direct. This is another thing that some employers are misunderstanding. And it has prevented at least one significant employer that I know of from joining the program. They did not understand that, when you assign that discussion about a one-to-one, you got to have, they are still getting the message or the misunderstanding that it's the same journey worker all the time. They think I have to have that one person assigned to that one apprentice all the time. And that right there, pretty clearly, I mean, it says that there's got to be a responsible licensed nurse physically present, blah, blah, blah. It's not the same one all the time. So just so you know that for all of you, if you're looking at potentially recruiting any additional employers, we were deep into a conversation with a sizable hospital before we realized that they thought, because they kept talking about how impossible it was going to be to do the scheduling, and all of this kind of stuff. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. If you're still onboarding new employers, that's one where it's an easy misunderstanding because we talk about a one-to-one ratio and they think that means it's the same one all the time locked together. So
Very good
go ahead.
point. Okay, very, very good point. Yeah, and some of our students may end up having 3 or 4 journey workers in that same semester. Our rule is that they cannot work with anybody who's not been trained as a journey worker, but that journey worker, just like Josh said, it can change. That person can change throughout the semester, just depending on schedules and needs. With us having OB clinicals maybe one day, but then med surg clinicals another. We need 2 journey workers in that situation anyway, if both of those particular areas are offered in that same facility. So there are many reasons we'll end up using more than one journey worker for that same student the entire time. All right, the competencies. So the Board of Nursing has a fantastic list that just shows all of the PN and the RN student apprentice competencies. So they're just listed here concisely from basic to advanced. So it's easy to identify what they can and what they cannot do based on their level in the programs. Now, another thing we want to emphasize to both the journey worker and the student would be the do not list. All of the things that they are not able to do, not permitted to do as a student nurse apprentice. So again, we want them to acknowledge that they've reviewed this. This is part of our attestation form that both the journey worker and the student sign after they've been onboarded or given that orientation. Now, we found out pretty quickly we needed a mechanism to document when students perform skills competently in the lab so that they know, and then the journey worker knows, that the student can then in turn go to the clinical space and practice those skills. So this was our way of doing so. We have all of the competencies listed for the PN or the RN, and we have the lab instructor sign off, date that, and that's our communication tool with journey workers. And I know some of the different programs handle that just a little bit differently, but this has worked really well for us. It's with our skills books that students have to have signed when they're going through clinicals to just document procedures that they've done throughout the program and show that progression. So this has worked well for us. Again, journey worker orientation and onboarding, is just from a slightly different perspective, but it's the same information that we're covering. We want to make sure everybody understands too what a journey worker is, because the name is not familiar to healthcare workers. Journey worker sounds more industrial, and at first we thought, well, maybe we'll just call this person a preceptor. But we decided that we'd keep the term journey worker because it really does help us to differentiate between those traditional preceptors and preceptors within the traditional and the apprenticeship program. So now that we've been going for a little while, it's a very familiar term and everybody associates it with the apprenticeship. So it's that qualified person, that mentor in their occupation who's experienced and proficient, and we do require that 1 year of experience. So documents that we collect from the journey worker. On the nursing side, early on we were really concerned about ACEN and our accreditation and where does that journey worker fall? Are they more like a clinical instructor? Are they more like a preceptor? So it was determined that ACEN kind of sided with the term preceptor. And so what we do, we don't collect official transcripts, but we do collect a credentialing form that's equivalent basically to a resume. So we will allow a resume to be submitted as well. But the credentialing form is an easy way that at onboarding, when we're doing this, you can hand it to the journey worker and ask them to complete it quickly and it's done. We just keep it on file, make sure that we have that association of that journey worker with that student. And again, keep these on file for when ACEN comes to visit us. We also have the attestation form that just basically states that each journey worker has gone through onboarding. They've been oriented, they've reviewed all of these requirements. And then also we have the contact information of our person, Brittany Denton, at the bottom of all of those forms so that they know how to directly communicate with us should there be any needs or any problems. Scheduling, that has Brittany could probably chime in here. It's been one of the most difficult things for us to keep up with just because so many people are going so many different directions. After a few episodes of trial and error, we decided that a Canvas Dropbox was the ticket. So we use Canvas as our learning management system. We have Dropboxes in every class. And so each week, At the beginning of the week, the student apprentice submits their schedule for that week, and they go ahead and they designate which days are clinical days and which days are work days, because we do think it's very important that we evaluate these students clinically, not talking about work hands, but clinically evaluate these students on our clinical eval tool the same number of times our traditional students are evaluated. So they're held to that same standard when you're looking at pass fail for our purposes with clinical grading. So we do have them designate which days are clinicals. This helps us maintain those clinical hours, a recording of those. The journey worker, the students, they exchange contact information. They're usually in touch with each other throughout the week. And again, it could be multiple journey workers, just depending on that scenario, that situation in the facility. All right, clinical versus work shifts. So we've been asked this a few times. So clinicals, we prefer, and the word preferably is in italics, that's emphasized there. We prefer a Monday through Friday day shift, if possible, for them to do their clinical piece. Now, we understand that that's not always possible. We just need to be notified, and the way they notify us is through that Canvas Dropbox. But we do prefer that if they can work on the day that their traditional groups are going to clinical, then that is helpful for us to be able to visit the students. Again, that's not always obtainable, and we understand that because of schedules. But if their journey worker is assigned to a Monday and all other traditional students are going to clinicals on Mondays that week, then we ask that the students sign up for that shift, basically. Work, we remind them that they can work nights, they can work days, they can work holidays, they work weekends. Of course, they have to be scheduled off for lecture time, lab, all of the related instruction that's happening in the classroom and on campus. But otherwise, they are free to work when the college is closed and so forth. That's been a question that's come up several times. This was just another kind of tip trick that I wanted to share with everybody. We found out early on that, we have such a variety of facilities that we're signed with that students aren't able to necessarily get all clinical hours at every facility that we are partnered with. A good example is this one. Maybe they don't have a pediatric unit. Maybe they don't have complex maternal infant, and the student is going to have to join a traditional group in order to meet those objectives for those classes and get the required number of clinical hours to complete our program. So what we do for every facility we sign with, we go ahead up front before they ever have an apprentice, and we identify the total number of hours required for each class, the clinical hours that can be completed at their facility, and then the hours that the student is going to have to complete outside of that facility, such as in row A here, the pediatrics hours. Notice at the top, it does say the employer is responsible for paying the apprentice, because again, we want to make sure we're very clear to our partners that no matter what, if they have the facility within the facility, the ability to meet all of these objectives and all of the clinical hours, they're great, they're paying them. But if they don't, they still are responsible for compensating the student for those hours done outside of their facility. And we have them sign this form just to keep a record that we did go through this. We did make sure that we, summarized and everybody was on the same page up front, because we know money can cause problems. So we don't want any of those issues. This is how we keep up with if a student does perform clinicals outside of the facility. So say for that PEDS shift that the student has to do outside, they would complete this form and submit it so that their employer does know it's been completed and they can be compensated for that. It's worked well for us too, and it puts it back in the student's hands a bit, helps them to be responsible for that piece. Work hands, again, that's the platform that was just shared with us for journey workers documenting competencies. So this helps them to, again, assess progress towards proficiency. And I loved what Josh said a few moments ago. This is not a one and done. They have to know that the student, it may take 6 times of the student performing a certain skill before that journey worker feels comfortable saying that they are ready to do this on their own. And these are just some screenshots. I think that the demo a while ago was much better, but this is again what they see whenever they sign on to the account as a supervisor. This is how they join. So in order for them to log into their account, we make sure that we give them instructions and we walk through how they can see the evaluations or the competency checklist. Now, let me share one other thing before we get to this slide. We have found it to be best practice to ask our journey workers to have a computer during onboarding. If they have access to go ahead and log in, they'll feel much more comfortable the first time that they have to go in and record any information from a clinical shift or a work shift. So it's great to go ahead and do that with the journey worker in your presence that first time during onboarding. Now, the three categories that they were talking about earlier, field training, demonstrates fundamentals, or proficient in tasks, that was the drop-down box that she was showing us earlier. So field training is basically just stating that the journey worker performs and gives directions with a skill or task. So the student's seen that particular skill in the lab, but then they come to the clinical setting, and the first thing is the journey worker providing basically a demo. Okay, the student learns how to perform, they observe, maybe they see some of those techniques or that equipment that's particular to that facility. You know, maybe the IV cannulas that we use are a little bit different than those at the facility. So they're able to see those differences. Then the student can perform that skill, but they may have assistance, some direction throughout the steps of that task and skill from their journey worker. So at that point in time, the journey worker could mark that as complete. Once the student does not need any direction, they don't need advice, they don't need assistance, the journey worker is basically just standing back, watching, sees that they're doing a great job, again, feels comfortable. I loved what you said about feeling comfortable, having that student perform that task on your child or your grandmother. You know, that's when you can mark proficient in the task. Now, and the question earlier about like the 12 lead EKG, there are some things such as that we don't do in the lab setting, but we do review them perhaps, you know, in class or in the lab. The student doesn't necessarily validate, but they've been reviewed. Then we would mark that on the form that I told you about earlier that we communicate with the journey worker, showing that we've reviewed or that they've completed a checkoff in the lab. And then they can be trained at that point in field, you know, if that's something that they utilize in that unit. Now, if it's not, then NA would be appropriate for that particular competency. Our clinical evaluations, I am not going to spend much time on this just because, you know, we all use different things. As I mentioned, we use ClinPrep. It's an electronic means. It has our EHR that the students do prep work in. It has our clinical evaluation tool, works well for us, and our journey workers are able to log into that. They're able to evaluate the student. We do not have them or ask them to grade any other additional paperwork. They simply evaluate the student's performance, and then our full-time faculty are going behind and they're looking at the paperwork and giving feedback based on that. Also wanted to mention our full-time faculty are going and doing visits. Right now we have them visiting at minimum 50% of the time. So if a student has 10 clinical shifts, then someone visits that site 5 times in the semester, and different colleges do this different ways. That is not required, but we do feel like we're the ones who have to ultimately evaluate that student pass fail. You know, the journey workers providing input, but the instructor has to give the pass or the fail. So we do feel that it's important for us to at minimum see them, you know, at the beginning of their clinical experience for a semester, in the middle, and at the end, so that we can attest to their progression throughout the program and throughout their experience. All right, these other slides were just a little bit more about ClinPrep. If anybody has questions about ClinPrep and wants to talk about that later, we can certainly do that. Again, it's worked for us. I know a lot of people use different things though. We have a nursing student handbook that we review with apprentices and all nursing students. So we make sure that we let students know that those policies and guidelines within this nursing student handbook, those are applicable to the apprenticeship as well. We have an apprenticeship handbook that's just specific to roles It reviews what the student is responsible for. It goes over guidelines such as submissions when they should be made, as far as clinical paperwork or their schedule being submitted into the Dropbox. So those are some of the things that are included in that handbook, and I'll definitely share that to the Dropbox that Meredith sent not too long ago this morning, I believe. What questions do y'all have? That's really everything in a nutshell on how we onboard.
Tiffany, I'll say
Good morning,
we have
Tiffany.
a contract now with Big Communications. It's a marketing firm out of Birmingham. We got a little bit of grant money left over from a previous grant that we're going to use with them to create some training videos. And I'll be reaching out to you and to anybody else that's interested in participating. We'd like to find out what kind of videos would be useful. Maybe if we created a generic journey worker onboarding video, or a generic apprentice onboarding video, or something like that, that you could all use, maybe just to speed up or maybe make it more consistent. Particularly, I'm thinking about the journey workers. If there's a difficulty of them sometimes scheduling to come and do your onboarding orientation, then if you could have some type of, recorded training video, and it'll be, not just like a recording of me in the top corner of the screen talking over a PowerPoint or something. It's going to be high quality stuff with some training material options to be added to it. So
that'll be great. I think that's a really good idea. And I didn't mention a while ago, but when we train the journey workers, we typically go to them, but we have grown so much that it's becoming impossible to go multiple times to the same facility before clinical starts. So Brittany has started doing a biweekly. It's biweekly, right, Brittany? The biweekly training online for journey workers. It's synchronous, so they are right there, in the chat room with them. But that's working out well and giving us some additional time back. So Brittany's not running around to facilities so many times.
I did learn that I was going and traveling, and the facility may want to train 5-8 journey workers at a time, and that was their intentions, but those nurses, their schedules would not line up to that one date and time. So what I decided was to create actually a QR code where the point of contacts for the facilities, whoever they want to recruit for training, they can give them that QR code. They'll scan it. It produces a form, and so that form, they just enter, their name, their email, what facility they're working at, their specialty. And then I have given out dates for the remainder of the year. Usually it's every Thursday at 9 a.m. That just is what works for me. And that way the nurses can see, weeks, months in advance, what works for me. Am I off? Am I at home? Whatever. And the training's the same regardless of what facility they're at. So that has worked out very well. I feel like more nurses are more willing to do the training. I've also have had students who come to me, this is their third semester in the program, or within being an apprentice, and they start building these relationships with coworkers in their home unit, and they see, hey, I want to help you. I want to be your backup journey worker. I want to do this. I want to do that. How can I do my training? And so I've created I just got some stickers from Staples, and I printed that QR code on the back of it, and they can place that on the back of their badge. And then that way that journey worker can scan, sign up, and go through the training. And then once they complete the training and send me back those 2 required forms, then I'll reach out to the point of contact and say, hey, John Doe completed their training today. They're an active journey worker. Congratulations, let's move forward. And so that has really, really helped with recruitment. I think it's been good with personal relationship with the apprentice as well. And then again, with specialties, when we start looking for OB nurses or mental health nurses or ICU nurses, it gets them on board fairly quicker than the traditional way that we were doing it. So I just wanted to share that. That's worked really well for us. Again, the journey workers can do it from at home, at work, wherever they may be, and they know ahead of time of when and where to be. And to add on to that, what I'll usually do is when I send the invite, I will send an electronic folder of journey worker onboarding documents. So they have those documents, all those things that Dr. Scarborough presented in the PowerPoint. They already have those documents to review. That way they can have, the opportunity to ask me questions on things that they may not understand. Again, I go through every single document. The orientation that I do takes about an hour and 15 minutes. So I feel like that's been very helpful. I've seen a lot of nurses be really happy to join in. They're not being, begged and plead for, but they really want to be a part of it. So I think it's great.
That sounds like a great system. Thank you for sharing that. And we may try to get with you on some content to help you, especially if you're going to be doing it online, be able to automate some of that training.
Thank you so much.
Wendy?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Scarborough, just curious, how willing would you be to share that presentation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Okay.
will give all we have to anybody who wants
Okay.
it. And like Meredith said, there's a Dropbox. If I'll try to upload it. I was having some trouble last time I tried to, but I'll send it to Meredith and she can upload it if I
Okay.
can't get in. But
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
we're definitely willing to share. My thoughts are don't reinvent a wheel. So take what works for you and
Right.
whatever doesn't, that's fine. And any of our documents that you get that you just want to change the name to yours, feel free. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I have one more
Sure.
question for you. When the onboarding, I'm envisioning, you were mentioning bringing the apprentices and the journey workers together for an onboarding event, right? Or
We
do you
do it
them
separately.
Okay.
We do it separately. So all of the apprentices come together and then we either go to each facility individually to offer onboarding for journey workers, or they can join the virtual onboarding.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I was envisioning using like a computer lab and having them
Yes.
come where they would have access to a computer. They wouldn't have to bring their own, but they could get all their documents taken care of. Okay. Thank you so
Right.
much. Yes. If you share that, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Sure. And WorkHands has an app as well. And so they can easily access that via telephone. So that's another convenient way to access WorkHands.
I'd say that's usually the primary way they wind up doing
Yeah.
it. The app, it's a really good app, well laid out and easy to use. So it's easy for the journey workers to be just tick, doing their evaluations pretty quickly.
And early on, whenever when we had just started, some of the journey workers felt a little frustrated with WorkHands because they thought it was going to be more intense than what it was. And after we showed them, it was no problem at all. So I do think starting out with holding their hand, walking through it with them present in the same room is great if possible. If not, then okay, online, let's take out your phone, let's download it together, let's walk through the steps together so that it's not as intimidating at first, since it's just a new product for them to use.
Brittany, I had a quick question. This is Cindy Mullinax from Gaston State. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious with the QR code and all that, if you have new nurses that are interested in being journey workers, do they have to also have approval from their facility to be in that role? Because we can't, we here at Gaston State, we can't just go and open it up to all nurses. The facility has to kind of handpick who they want to be in those roles. Just curious about that.
Right. So usually what happens, so far what's happened is the apprentice has a conversation with the manager, or the nurse has a conversation with the manager, and the manager can approve or, not approve the journey worker to be or the nurse to be a journey worker. Again, I don't, once someone signs up, once I see their name on the sign up sheet through the form, I go ahead and let the point of contact know, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting so-and-so at my next scheduled session on this date. That way, if there are any, issues with them moving forward with the training, we can address that prior. And again, the main thing I can't stress enough is communication. I constantly talk to my point of contacts with the facilities, constantly keeping them in the loop. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. I don't want to take away opportunity from any nurses, but then again, I also realize not all nurses are meant to be, in this role either.
Right.
And that's okay. But the biggest thing is communication, just keeping my point of contacts in the loop. And then ultimately they have the say so on assigning that journey worker to that apprentice. So I don't do any assigning, you're going to partner with this journey worker. I don't do that, that the facility does. And so the student is just responsible for communicating with me and the course instructor who they will be with on that shift. That way we know, okay, if we go and do a visit, this is who I'm looking for. This is who I expect to see. When it comes time for reviewing evaluations, this is my person. Then I need to make sure the evaluation's completed in work hands or clin prep. So again, communication's the biggest thing that's been the most helpful in this situation. It's walking that fine line. You want to recruit, but then you want to be careful. So keeping the point of contacts with the facility in the loop is really the best thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I see a question from Shelton about how long you allow for each session. I believe, Brittany, you said it's about an hour and 15 minutes or so. Is that right?
Yeah, I tried to get it. When I present it on the sign up, I tell them it's about a 90-minute session just to allow any questions to be addressed, anything that we need to walk through again, like work hands or clin prep. Typically my spiel is about an hour. Because I just really want to know that they are receiving all the information, not only, what's required by AOA and ABN, but also we want, we don't want the standards for coastal to change, so I just really give them that one-on-one time to make sure. So that's what the amount of time that I set aside for these nurses. It doesn't necessarily may take that long, but every time I do a session, I do block out 90 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Josh asked me to put the link to the drive in the chat. I've put that there. I will also put it in the follow-up email with you guys. It'll have Tiffany's presentation, their handbook, the document where they, track off-site clinical hours. It also has the link to the recording of our last meeting that we had in July, and I will upload this one too for anybody who missed it. I will say the link, it gives you permission to edit, because I would love for all of you to upload anything that you have that you think would be helpful to the group. So I'm also telling you that as a caution. Anything you want to use, download it to your computer before you edit it. If you edit it there, it's going to edit it for everybody. And that is something I would do. So I just wanted to throw that caution out there. Any other questions or best practices that any of you or lessons learned that you've had since our last meeting in July that you would like to share with, for the good of the group? Okay, well, I would just like to give a huge round of applause to Brittany and Dr. Scarborough and their team. Just such an amazing job that you guys have done, and I really appreciate the time that you took to share all of that with all of us today. Tawana,
Thank you.
Okay, upcoming things. We're trying to do a group employer meeting twice a year. So we had one in March. I've set the date for the next one for Friday, November 17th at 9 a.m. I will send y'all that invite and a little information about it and ask you to please send that out to your participating employer partners. It'll just be kind of like what we did at the beginning. Today, Josh and I will share some updates from the AOA. We will highlight, last time we had 4 or 5 hospital partners come on and just, talk about what's working for them, what obstacles they had hit and how they figured out some way around that. So probably do a little something like that again. If they're, like Josh mentioned early in the meeting, if there's anything you need us to address with employers in general, we're happy to do that. Just shoot us an email, and you're welcome to join that meeting if you want to. Please don't feel like you have to, but you're of course welcome to. I've set the next meeting for us. I'm trying to do our meetings once a semester. So I've set it for Tuesday, March the 5th at 9 a.m. and it'll be here before we know it. Isn't that crazy? I will send that invite to all of you. And again, if If I'm leaving anybody off of this email list, please call my attention to that. I want to make sure that I have everybody on here that wants to be on here for these meetings.
Meredith, can I ask one more question? I know there's always one, that's always got all the questions. Sorry, but I've got two questions. I've got one for Dr. Scarborough. Dr. Scarborough, can you give me an idea, how many students do you have that are working as apprentices right now in your program?
It's right around 50, I believe.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
what is your total? I'm just trying to do a comparison.
Mhm.
Your total enrollment for your program?
Right around 500.
Okay. And then Dr. Spivey, Ms. Bunton, how many students do you guys have in your program right now that are apprentices?
We have 4 in the ADM program. I'm not sure about Gwen with the LPNs.
Okay.
And we have about 500 students in our program as well.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. We were just trying to gauge an idea of, what can we reasonably expect. So thank you both very much.
We have anywhere
always
from one apprentice to 50.
Yep, that number is always going to fluctuate based on employer demand. It's theoretically, if we're doing a good job, there could be a situation where your numbers will start to not be as high in every cohort, right? Because you start to satisfy that need a little bit.
Right.
So one of the things that we focus on, and many of you have heard me say this before, our top line metric is employers served, not numbers of apprentices, because numbers of apprentices is beyond all of our individual control. It's how many employers are we serving? And if they need 2, cool. If they need 20, great. That's the way we measure that. We don't really get hung up. I mean, we like to brag about, hey, we got 500 nursing apprentices now across the state. That's great. But really, it's just a representation of, are we meeting the need that employer has? So if they need 1, we'll work just as hard to get them 1 as if they need 100.
We appreciate
We're
that.
fairly new into this too, Dr. DuBose, okay?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, Dr. Spivey.
We're fairly new into this too, okay?
Right, you are. I know y'all just began. And one more thing. Our administration, we were trying to anticipate questions our administration may have from us, like what can we reasonably expect as far as the volume. And so thank you. That's very, very helpful. I appreciate it.
And I think some schools, I don't know if anybody's doing it now, but when they first started out, you as a sponsor can also say, look, I've only got so much capacity. So I want to start out with 10 or 15 or something that I can manage while I learn this in this first cohort. So even if you have 5 employers, you may have to just tell them, let's just do 2 or 3 per employer for this semester. Now, of course, we don't want that to be the long-term scenario. And you also need to be, I don't know that anybody's done this recently, but you need to be careful about cherry picking employers, because now you're limiting the options for the apprentices to select from. So it's not like, well, we're just going to serve this one hospital because they can do 20 placements, and now that's easy because my clinical person only has to deal with that one location. We're keeping in mind the priority is serving the needs of the employer and serving the needs of the apprentice. But we recognize that there's a capacity, right? I mean, you can only do as many as you can do. So.
We also have several schools in the area that are doing the apprenticeship here, and so our employers are limited on how many they're taking and stuff like that. So.
Right, Dr. Spivey, you do have a heavy competition in your area.
We do.
Dr. Scarborough, it's Casey from Just State. I have a couple questions. Or Brittany, either one. Could you give us like an idea of your breakdown? Who's in long-term care versus how many you have in long-term, how many you have in acute care?
Brittany probably can answer that better than me.
So we have currently 5 in long-term care out of our 49 apprentices that we have. We do have a few. I have 1 in L&D, 2 in peds, 2 in ICU, and the remaining are in med-surg acute care. And that's LPN and RN.
Okay. I have so many thoughts. They're just not.
Hey,
coming out.
Any of you, please email me any questions. I don't mind setting up a Teams meeting. I set one up yesterday just to answer a few questions. You know, our process is how do we do it, and just I can share my screen and say, here, this is the form I use. This is how we do scheduling. Anything I can do to help, I certainly don't mind. Any questions, if it's just one question or 10, I don't mind talking about it. That's what I'm here for.
Brittany, will you drop your email address in the chat?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Casey, this is Jennifer. So we talked recently because I have, I'm at 40 right now with a potential of about 30 more students coming on for spring. And ours is about 50-50. It may even be more in long-term care because I have a huge long-term care bed in our area. But we have worked out some issues, and I did talk to Meredith about this. A couple of things that we're doing different with our long-term care is we are going to begin rotating them back into clinical, acute care clinicals. They are missing some of that adult health experience because not all long-term care facilities are created equal. Some have more skill opportunities than others. Students are also, they compare and they think if they haven't done a skill or that's not what they're doing heavily, they haven't had a good clinical day, which we all know a clinical day does not, it's not all about skills. But we are giving them that opportunity. We also offer them the opportunity to volunteer to do an ER clinical where they can build their clinical skills. No charge to the facility, that's voluntary. We will not allow them to do night shift in second semester because that has proven to be problematic. And we are setting out specific clinical objectives for our long-term care groups because they're missing assessment. They're missing some of that critical thinking, documentation. There were just some gaps for long-term care. I've met with all of our groups. The long-term care groups were fine with this because ultimately the goal is they hire on as an apprentice and stay in that long-term care facility. And that's not what we've seen happening. Our first groups have been pretty dissatisfied in long-term care, but I think it's what their expectation of the apprenticeship was going to be and what it actually is. So those are some of our differences.
And that's very much going to be dependent on not only the employer that they're working with, but Brittany's talked about the journey worker onboarding. That's critical because some of the, after you play a game of telephone 2 or 3 times, we've clearly communicated with the owners, and then we've maybe communicated with the CNO or whoever's the head person. But some of that information is not making it all the way down to the journey worker who's actually the one engaging with the apprentice. And that's been where some of the friction has come, is just that journey worker didn't have a clear understanding of what they're supposed to be doing or what they're supposed to be expecting that person to do. And we've seen with 500 nursing apprentices in just over a year of operating this program, we've already seen a little bit of everything. We've had an apprentice walk in and there was no other nurse on the floor, and they handed them the keys and said, "Here's the med cart, I'm out." And I mean, so you get every variety of experience. But I think that you've mentioned communication, and then building over time. You see, like Jennifer just said, there's some parameters here that we need to look at. Night shift in a long-term care facility is not really a great training environment, or at least in those particular ones, because it's not as active. There's just a lot of standing around sometimes. So anyway, you are certainly encouraged to do exactly as Jennifer just described. I'm looking at this situation. I'm evaluating, is this good training for this apprentice? I need to build some additional parameters around these types of placements. Do it. And just communicate that with the employers. And as she said, they typically are going to be understanding of that.
Thank you for sharing that, Jennifer.
Guys, I'm gonna put one other thing on your calendar. You don't just a heads up. Next Thursday, the U.S. Department of Labor is hosting a national convening. They're calling it a community of practice on registered apprenticeships in emerging occupations, and they're highlighting registered nurses. And so Meredith and I will be on there to talk about this program next week. And it's
Wait, I think
what?
I think it's tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow.
Oh, well, hell yeah, whatever, tomorrow. Yeah. So, tomorrow is tomorrow. Yeah, it's tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern time. But I'm just putting that on your radar because we're going to be talking, and it's going to be well attended. There's already a registration. You guys don't need to come to it. It'll be more basic level than anything that would be particularly advantageous to you, but you may get pinged by some of your peers in other states because of this. We get folks reaching out all the time. So just if you start all of a sudden getting that map, and these are the schools that have programs, and of course on our website is a map where you can go and find contact information for all of the sponsorships in the state. So just kind of giving you a heads up, put that on your radar. If you start getting calls about it from out of state, that'll probably be why, if you haven't already gotten those kinds of calls. Also, since I mentioned the map, we found, the map that's on our webpage where you can go and see any sponsor in the state and see what programs they train. We found out that some shady characters were scraping that site and getting everybody's email addresses off of it, and then sending them things that look like they were either from us or look like they were from the Department of Labor. So we're going to be obscuring your email addresses if you're the point of contact, and changing it to a form that a person who wants to contact you will fill out. It'll send you an email that'll probably come from something generic like, info@AL Apprentice or something like that. The folks that built that dashboard for us are working on changing that little technology right now. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks that change will be implemented. So if you start getting an email from, it'll be something very generic like that, info@AL Apprentice, then that means somebody went through that dashboard to communicate with you. So
Josh, you
all right.
mentioned dates, and that made me wonder, do you want to say anything about National Apprenticeship Week?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so National Apprenticeship Week is in November, second week in November. I'll get the dates wrong if I try to pull it off the top of my head. A couple of years ago during COVID, we really couldn't do a heck of a lot for National Apprenticeship Week. And to be honest with you, the timing of National Apprenticeship Week doesn't make much sense to me at all. It's in the middle of the academic semester. It's right before Thanksgiving. People aren't too much paying attention to it. I don't know why the feds always said it this way. But what we did a few years ago when we were building out our social media presence with Twitter, we asked for you to just, and we'll send it out to you again, but we sent you out a thing and just said, hey, ask anybody involved in your apprenticeship program, your apprentices or your journey workers or whatever, to do a little 20-second max selfie video and say, this is what apprenticeship. I'm Josh Laney. I'm a nursing apprenticeship at Coastal Alabama Community College, and this is what apprenticeship has meant to me. I'm able to work and not have to pick up extra shifts at night or whatever. And we got some really cool firsthand anecdotal, just, raw videos that way. Well, now since Twitter is X is crazy, whatever the heck it is, we're going to probably be moving off of Twitter and creating a LinkedIn page for our office. So we're going to kind of do the same thing this year. We'll send you out a little mini script and ask you to just distribute it to your apprentices and have a hashtag associated with our LinkedIn. I mean, apprentices probably don't have LinkedIn pages. I personally can't stand it, but I guess I'm going to have to be on it because that's about the only thing left. And I'm not doing state agencies. We can't do the TikTok and all of that. And I'm sure most of you can't either. And I don't know how Instagram works. So I'm just old. So anyway, that'll be coming, but that'll be kind of our activity for this year for National Apprenticeship Week. So just be on the lookout for an email about that.
Okay.
Good.
Unless there's anything else, we'll go ahead and close out. Thank you everybody for your time today. And again, thank you to the Coastal Alabama team for sharing all that wonderful information with us. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thanks.